Awesome. Hey, ladies, thanks for coming to the show.
Thanks for
Hey,
having
thanks
us.
for having us. I'm super excited.
I am too. I know this is definitely something that we've been planning to do, so I'm very excited for Takia and Jordan to be joining me today. So, ladies, if you can give us a brief introduction as to who you are, just so the listeners can know what you guys do and who you are.
Jordan, you go
Should
ahead.
I want to go first? Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Scott. I am the co founder and associate director of Black People Die by Suicide 2. I'm a person with lived experience with a mental health disorder. I'm living with depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And I have to say, I'm managing pretty well. So I'm excited to tell you guys about our organization and also, get into our backstory and why we decided to start it.
Yes, so
Awesome.
I'm the other half to Black People Die by
The better
Suicide.
half.
Takia Blackman, co-founder and executive director of our new organization. I always say it's our baby, it's an infant. We just launched June 6th. Um, and the organization initially started as a podcast like a month before, and everyone kept saying like your organization, because we were doing like a marketing tour so we could get the word out about the podcast, and everyone kept saying like your organization, and I was like, y'all, we are just a podcast, we are not an organization. But because of like the DMs and the emails that we've been getting, it showed us that Black people are ready to talk about suicide,
Yeah.
and also that there were so many people who was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I stumbled upon this Instagram page, or I don't know how I found y'all, but I'm so glad I did. My uncle passed away from this, or this person was connected. And that, I was like, I think it's more than a podcast. I feel like it's actually a movement, and it's time for us to actually talk about suicide
Did we lose
prevention.
Takia?
She,
Did you lose me? You can't hear me?
we lost you for just a little bit,
Yeah.
maybe like the
Oh,
last
I
10
don't.
seconds.
You're good.
I don't even remember where I ended, but we were just I was saying that I started realizing that it was more than just a podcast. I feel like it's a movement. Black people are ready to talk about this conversation. I'm a person with lived experience. I'm a suicide attempt survivor, and I lost my 13-year-old cousin to suicide, and so that's kind of why I'm so passionate about suicide prevention, and just wanting to make sure that suicide is a part of the mental health
Yeah.
conversation. We cannot omit that. And I feel like that's what is often done, because suicide is a hard topic to discuss.
It's certainly a part of mental health, and I do think for years, just as much like mental health overall in the Black community has been stigmatized, suicide and death by suicide has been strongly stigmatized
Mm-hmm.
in the Black community. So I love, love, love the work that you ladies are doing. Um, y'all remember how we met?
Yes.
Yes.
That's a story.
Yes.
How? Oh my goodness! Oh my
Almost
goodness!
stranded at a BWI, but we made
Yeah,
it. We made
that
it
is that where
through.
I was? BWI, okay. Because I
Yes.
think I was originally supposed to fly out of DCA. We were on the way to Essence Fest. My flight got moved or canceled or what have you, so I booked it at BWI, and then that flight almost got canceled. So we in
Right.
the line trying to figure out,
Right.
okay, what's going on with our flights or whatever. And yeah, it was connection from then.
And it's funny because I was like, Jordan, that's Dr. Chanda. Jordan's like, because Jordan don't really be on social media. She's like, I don't know. I was like, her podcast. I was like, she is just got on Revolt. Like, I'm literally all of this stuff. Like her content is about this and this. And Jordan's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Jordan is like me when it comes to TikTok because I don't be in the TikTok streets like that. I'm here for it. And I'm very grateful for the connection that we made. It was super random, but I'm a firm believer in divine connection because, I love the work that you ladies are doing, and I don't believe in coincidences. So I'm, again, grateful for the connection that we made. So tell us a little bit about how you guys met. How was this match made in heaven? Like, where's the story start?
Jordan, I'm telling it or are you telling it?
You know what? I'll tell it. Funny enough, as Takia mentioned, that she's had her own experience with a suicide attempt. I'm someone who's been hospitalized multiple times for suicidal ideation, and we actually met in the hospital. We were at a partial
Wow.
hospitalization program together. Only a brief while. I think that might have been my last day or my next to the last day. I was getting ready to discharge, and she was actually coming on, and she asked me for my phone number before I left, and we've been friends ever since. That was what, 5 years ago.
Hmm.
So both, the experience of suicide and this topic really does mean a lot to both of us because it's something that we've lived through, and then we were able to connect through that. So we've been friends ever since. Takia came to me with this idea for the podcast and Black People Die by Suicide too earlier this year. So we just want to, share our story in hopes that that would encourage other Black people to also be a little bit more vulnerable and open about their mental health too.
That's amazing. So you guys literally met like at the hospital. Both of you
Yes.
guys were being treated for it. Wow. How was that? So like meeting someone and like having this connection, this shared experience with them.
Well, the thing is, Takia is a very, why am I talking about myself in third person? But I'm a very like bubbly, social kind of person. And I don't know exactly what Jordan said in group because we were in group. And I can't remember what she said, but I know that I was like, I need to connect with her. It was just something innate that was like, you should connect with her. And I found out she was about to be discharged. So I was like, let me slide on in and ask for her phone number. So, and it's been, I think because when you're in the hospital, you're experiencing the most, like you're most vulnerable at that
Yes.
moment. And so when you're in group, you're sharing the most vulnerable parts of yourself, and you start to make connections, or you start to feel like you're forming a bond with somebody, or you feel like they can identify. And in that moment, I felt like, oh my gosh, someone gets it. I don't have to go through this alone. And Jordan is literally my partner, like in terms of if I'm struggling with something, I'm like, I gotta reach out to my girl Jordan because she knows what to do, what to say, how to say it, like. And it's hard to find those types of people because suicide is stigmatized, so people will be judgmental. Why you want to do that? That's dumb, all of that. And so I feel like this is someone I can confide in, and when I need encouragement. And Jordan won't freak out because I'm a person who I'm very vocal in the sense that I'm somebody who struggles with chronic suicidal ideation. Like, it sucks. I started struggling with suicidal thoughts around 11 years old. And now I'm in my 30s, and it's like it never left. Like, do I have good moments? Of course, because ebbs and flows depending on what's happening. Maybe there's a med change, or maybe something happening in life. But I've had to learn in therapy, like, to really not have that be my default, because as a kid, anytime something happened, my brain would just go there. Like, it just happened automatically. And so even like now, earlier this year, I had an experience. I told Jordan, like, girl, I'm having these thoughts. And Jordan's like, she was here in an hour. We going to the hospital, girl. So, it's just good to kind of have that person. And I feel like in the hospital, it was just something about Jordan that I was like, I feel like we could be a great support system. So she supports me and I support her.
Amazing. So when I'm hearing like so many different things here, one, vulnerability, right? So when people are kind of like forced into being vulnerable, whether it's like a tragedy or a crisis or what have you, two things can happen. We can either like push people away, or we can invite like people into our support system. And it sounds like both of you kind of like just invited one another into your support system in that vulnerable space of being in a hospital.
Yeah, you know what? I'm so glad that that happened because I'm the type of person who would typically push people away. So I'm glad that I was able to make that connection with Takia. So
That's
I did something
good.
different. I tried something
Yes.
different. You know what I'm saying? I was a little bit more open, a little more vulnerable, and
Yeah.
look where it turned out.
I love that. I love that. If you guys are listening to the audio, so we have one more guest on the podcast. That's the dog. What's the dog's name?
Oh my gosh, I'm so
I was
sorry.
You're
wondering
good.
I was like, is that Dr. Chanda's dog? Because I don't have a dog.
No.
That's
That is,
Lucy.
yes, that is Lucy.
Oh,
I apologize. She's in a frisky mood this
oh,
evening. I took her to the vet earlier. She's she's getting better though. She's feeling better, so I'm happy. Sorry for the noise.
I
you're
was like,
good.
what
You're
is
good.
going
She
on?
just sounded like she wanted to join in a conversation, but that's fine. We've had babies crying. I live in the city, so it's always horns and ambulances. So y'all are good. Oh, so Takia, you helped us kind of like learn more about what got you hospitalized in the first place with like these chronic suicidal ideations that you felt like well have been present since you were younger. Jordan, do you mind kind of going into detail about like what led you to your hospitalization and yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a native Marylander. I was born in DC, but I was raised in Maryland. I've lived with my father, my mother, and my brother right here in Prince George's County. And for the most part, everything was good in childhood. Um, Again, some of my fondest memories with my family, going down to the waterfront, like walking the monuments, everything was good until maybe about first grade. Then my parents started to argue. And so, needless to say, our house just kind of became a bit tumultuous for many, many years. And then further on into my childhood, I started to experience some unwanted, inappropriate touching, um, sexual contact, if you will. And throughout all of that, for some reason, when I was a kid, I was very, very resilient. I was able to push through. I was part of a million different clubs, sports, had my part time job, my friend group, everything was going good. No one would have ever suspected, I'm sorry, a thing like was happening at home. But fast forward 2008, it was the year that I was graduating from high school, and I graduated. My father got really, really sick, so he wasn't able to come. 2 weeks after I graduated high school, he actually passed away from lung cancer.
Sorry
And
to
I
hear
really
that.
didn't have time to grieve or, dwell on it because literally he died in June, middle of August. I was off to Atlanta for undergrad. Um, Looking back, I realized that I had a lot of unhealthy coping skills to get me through undergrad studies, but at the time I didn't realize it. It wasn't until my last semester of undergrad that everything just completely fell apart. I ended up seeing a psychologist at my school, um, and I started meeting her maybe about 2 or 3 weeks in. I saw her one day, and the night prior, I was at home in my apartment with my means of, I was strongly considering suicide. I had my means in hand and I was going to go through with it. But for whatever reason, I didn't. And I saw my psychologist the next day, told her about it, and I ended up being involuntarily committed to the hospital. Put in the back of a squad car, driven to the west side of Atlanta to a psychiatric hospital. And that was kind of the beginning of my mental health journey. For whatever reason, I just wasn't able to hold on to those things by myself anymore. It just all came bursting out. I remember the day that I felt like the world just kind of fell apart. I was sitting on the MARTA train, getting ready to go into downtown Atlanta for school. And as far as I know, I was sitting on the train, minding my business, chilling, waiting for it to take off so I can get to class. And this black lady, she sits in the seat like across from me. And maybe about 3 minutes after she sat down, she tapped me on my knee. And I looked over at her and she asked me like, "Are you okay?" And I just kind of, it caught me off guard. I was like, "Wait, what do you mean?" I was, "Yeah, I'm okay." And she just kind of paused and hesitated. And she really looked at me. And she was like, "No, are you okay?" And so I kind of paused too. And I'm like, "No, yeah, yeah, I'm good." And she said, "Okay." I could tell she didn't believe me. And I kid you not, I turned my body away from her toward the window and I held my book bag close to my chest and I cried the entire commute into downtown Atlanta because it felt like for the first time someone actually saw me.
She saw
They
you.
saw, yes, they saw past all my good grades and all the things that I had going on. Um, Job, clubs, sports didn't matter. Someone had finally saw all the things that I was holding in, and it was at that moment that I knew I couldn't do it by myself anymore. So that's when I, sought treatment through school, ended
Wow.
up being hospitalized, and that was the start of my journey. And I've been, involved in some sort of mental health treatment ever since.
Yeah.
And you know what? I can honestly say it's been really, really hard. That was in 2012, and it's been a long 11 years, but things are going pretty well today. So I'll take that.
I think that's such a beautiful story because so far too often in our lives we can go feeling unseen because of like our accomplishments or the things that we're able to do well. It makes people, it's hard for people to see like the real us, the us that could
Right.
be struggling. Yeah, that's so I appreciate that vulnerability.
You know, it's interesting that you said that because I was very similar in the sense of like people knew, like even undergrad, I was at Howard. I founded organizations on campus. I was literally like, when you talk about working, before I got into the mental health space, my background is communications and media. So I had internships and was doing freelance at BET, TV1. Like I was just
So
out there doing all this stuff, and everyone's like, "Oh, Takia's fine. Like there's nothing." So when they found out that I text a friend and I told her, "Oh, it would be better if I was. It would be better if I wasn't here." She didn't know that at the time I had taken these substances, and I was like, "I'm just gonna go in my sleep because it'll be easier." And the police officers had like broken through the window, and they're like, "We got a call. Can you make it to the door?" And I was able to kind of like, I don't remember everything because like I didn't have anything to like eat or drink in like maybe 4 days. So I was weak. I didn't take care of my hygiene. I was isolating, but I kind of like stumbled my way to the door. And I do remember telling them like, "This is what I did,
Jordan, can
and
you
I
hear
don't know
her?
why y'all here because I'm just waiting to die. Like it's gonna
Dang,
happen."
just when the story was Takia, we lost you again. You said
You
you were
lost
weak.
it.
Yeah, we lost you. You
Oh,
said you weren't taking
what
care of
is?
your hygiene.
Yeah, that's the
Yes,
last thing
I
we
was.
heard.
Oh, okay. I was not taking care of my hygiene, and I said the police officers. I was like weak, and I kind of made it. I made my way to the door, and they were like, "We got a phone call, so we're doing a wellness check." And I just told them, I said, "You know what? I don't even know why y'all here, cause like I'm waiting to die." And I told them what I did, and they was like, "Oh, you're a threat to yourself. So we can handcuff you, which is a whole nother issue. We shouldn't be doing that to people with mental
Yeah,
health challenges, or we can call the paramedics." So I am grateful that they gave me an
they
option,
gave you a
even though
choice. Yeah,
both options was going to get me to the place that I wasn't trying to
yeah,
go. But I got there, and when I got there and I was evaluated by the psychiatrist, he said the same thing. He's like, "Yeah, you're a threat. So you could commit yourself or we'll have to do it." And he's like, "But I want to encourage you to commit yourself because it'll give you more control over the process." So I was like, I don't even know what I'm signing up for. I was terrified. I tell this story all the time. You're a millennial, you know about Good Burger. I thought when I went upstairs, it was about to be over. It was about to be like Keenan and Kel, Good Burger kind of thing. I was like, oh man, I'm terrified. And but I went up there and it wasn't like that. And I remember like the director of the unit had told me, I was like, I don't belong here. I was like, I went to Howard and I went to Georgetown and just going off like all the stuff. And I'm doing this and I'm working really hard in my career and I got my own apartment, just going on and on. And she's like, "Okay, you got a master's, you got a bachelor." She's like, "And?" I'm like, "Yes, I don't belong here with these people. Like, why am I here with these people?" And she said, "No, you're here because your brain is sick. When your heart is sick, you have to go go to the cardiologist. But you have not been doing a great job at taking care of your brain, and so that's why you're here." That happened in 2016. I never forgot it. Now it's like you can't separate your mental health from your physical health. They all work
no,
together. And that was when I realized that I needed to make a change because if I didn't, I would risk being back in there. Now, granted, I have gone to partial hospitalization programs multiple times since then, but I haven't gone back inpatient. And so that was really kind of what started my journey into the mental health space. And then I started pursuing all these certifications in mental health because I just wanted to become educated, not just on my personal experience, but just different evidence-based training so I could make sure that I had a full understanding and a better picture, so that I could better understand myself and also other people as well.
Yeah. So because someone helped you, it's like I'm indebted to other people. Like I want to help other people. So I think that's how oftentimes that works in the nonprofit industry. Like people establish organizations that they're passionate about, that they have experience with. Okay. So two ladies, both hospitalized for, suicide attempts, or suicide ideation with intent, for you. One was voluntary, one was involuntary. But both of you guys were put in a squad car. Is that accurate?
No, Jordan was.
Okay.
I told them to call the paramedics. So they called the paramedics and I was transported. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what was that like for Jordan to be met by a squad car, be put in the back of a police car? And then Takia, I want you to go into what that was like being met by the police in such a vulnerable state.
You know what? I'm very grateful that the police officer that came to get me was very, very nice. I didn't end up being handcuffed. He just told me, I have to transport you. I was in the back of the squad car and I kept thinking to myself, what did I do wrong? Like, how did I get in the back of a squad car? But again, he was very, very kind. Didn't have any issues, any run-ins, no disrespect. So I'm very, very grateful that he was compassionate. But I can honestly say I did feel like I was in trouble for something that I couldn't control, for something that wasn't my fault. At the time, I didn't realize that because, again, it was the very, very beginning of my mental health journey. But looking back, I couldn't control that I felt depressed. Depression isn't something that you can just switch, flip a light switch and just be happy. It doesn't work like that.
Exactly.
So even though I was put in a squad car, and even though I did feel like, dang, like what did I do wrong? I didn't end up feeling like a criminal per se, because again, my experience with the cop was decent.
Yeah. Wow. No, you were going to say something, Dr.
No,
Chanda?
you can go ahead. I'll just say my thought after you're done.
Okay. Are you going to remember?
Yeah. I'm going to start writing everything down.
So I overall, and I think Jordan and I are very fortunate that we had pretty good experience because we hear some horrible stories.
Yeah.
But the police officer was very nice. And I do know at the time, I don't live in PG County anymore, but at the time it happened in PG County. And I know that a lot of the police officers are trained in crisis intervention, so that helps. Mm-hmm. And he was like, mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so I know he said to me, he was like, like, I understand you're scared and you may not really understand what's going on, but, someone contacted me. I didn't know exactly who told him but I found out afterwards. And he's like, they're just concerned about your safety. And because you told me that you had taken these pills and, had this bottle of wine and you said you was about to die in your sleep, he's like, I can't leave you here knowing that information. Mm. So he's like, I can give you a choice. And so when the paramedics arrived, they, it was just, I just pretty much sat down. They asked me questions like, what's going on? And I told them that I felt like my childhood trauma, as well as like at that time I had recently graduated with my master's. Did y'all lose me again?
Takia, I think we lost you again.
What is going on today? Oh man.
I told them that I felt. That's when it went off.
Oh, I told them that I felt. It's so crazy. Last week we was on something. Jordan was messing up. Now it's me. What's going on?
Yeah, y'all switched a little bit.
So I told them that I felt like my childhood trauma and my like current life, like in the sense of I had just graduated with my master's. and just trying to transition into like adulthood, trying to pay bills, and you're in your 20s, and I just felt like I was just having a hard time trying to adult.
Mm-hmm.
And then with my some of my challenges and being a child was like I watched my mom be verbally and physically abused. My father, not by my dad, but my father also had a drug problem. Actually, he still does to this day. So I would go to go to the prison to see my father. Like I remember putting my hand on like the plexiglass, seeing my dad. And my parents were teenagers when they had me. My mom was 18, my dad was 19. So like we grew up in like public housing, and just I was exposed to a lot. Like I remember seeing like a kid seeing like crack bottles and stuff like on the floor, on the ground. And so all of that stuff started to really impact me, and I felt like my childhood and my current like present life was just colliding, and it was like too much. And I was like, I don't know what to do with all of these feelings. And I've been saying since I was in middle school that I want to die. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I don't want to be here. So that's ultimately what got me into the hospital.
So, Takia, you noticed that pattern of it's starting in like middle school with the statements like, yeah, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to die. Okay. Jordan, do you remember when it started for you?
So the very first time, and I think probably the only distinct time that I remember experiencing some symptom of a mental health issue, I was also in middle school. I was in seventh grade, I believe. And I remember going to my guidance counselor and telling them that I felt like everyone was just like looking at me. I feel like it was kind of the start. That sounds weird, but I think that was kind of the start of some social anxiety, perhaps. Because I always felt like people were looking at me or poking fun at me, and rationally thinking back on it, that wasn't the case. But I guess that was just some of the way the anxiety started to